live. Share to the Mindsets. Special guests, Garry Shapiro and Evan Shapiro, two brothers. Two highly people that I look up to, called good friends and exceptional great lawyers. So we're here at the office at the Daryl King team. We got a live audience. Right? So they're excited, they're pumped up, and you know, these two have a wealth of knowledge and expertise in real estate. So Gary's my personal lawyer, and you know, a lot of our clients use their services and stuff like that. He's just young in the thing, like he's only 29, but he's been doing it for 3 decades, right? Then he's got his younger brother here with him. So they're just at Bayview and Shepherd, but they'll service you anywhere. So I'd just like to introduce Garry first. Introduce yourself, Garry.
Garry Shapiro. Shapiro Real Estate and Business Lawyers. Thank you for having us on. We go back several years.
Oh, yeah.
We were at a lot of golf tournaments.
A lot of charity events.
Yes.
A lot of charity events, right? So Garry and I both really believe in giving back, right? So now he's got his younger protege right here that
Thank you, Daryl.
eventually is going to take over the business when he's ready to release the reins.
When I die at my desk.
Yeah, well, that's okay. But at least he's there in your footsteps,
Absolutely.
right? So today we're going to talk about, you know, the right things to do and the wrong things not to do. Because, guys, people don't realize when you're dealing with real estate, it's people's largest investment for most people, unless they're big businesses and they have big businesses. But for the average person, their home, their investments, or their condos or townhouses are their biggest investments. And there's so many little things that you can do incorrectly that can cost hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars and many years in a lawsuit. So today we're going to find out the right way to do something and the wrong way not to do something. So it's going to be a really fun, it's going to be a very interactive show. So, you know, we want you, if you got any questions on that, you know, feel free to reach out and we'll try and make sure that we answer all the questions are there. I know last time when we had Beta on there, we went for an hour and a half and people were just throwing them out there. But before I want to start, I just want to wish Candace congratulations in another day maybe. So she's going to have a baby boy. She's going to the doctors. I just got off the phone with her. We want to wish Crystal, our office manager, it's her birthday today. Happy birthday. It's, where's Tracy? Tracy should be in here somewhere. Her birthday. And wish her happy birthday. And it was my sister's birthday the other day. So happy birthday, and Candace, all the best on the new baby boy. So we're going to start this show so we have, you know, I just typed up three agreements, right? So I had a freehold. So what explain the aspects of a real estate offer and what makes it a legal binding offer? Your typical, right here I have a typical freehold offer. So what is the aspects that they should start out with, right? What is the first thing they should have? The names, the address?
Absolutely. I'll let Evan start off.
You have the essential elements of the contract. You want to know who the parties are. You want to know the purchase price, deposit terms. And of course, to have a binding contract, you need a signature. And as a tie-in to what Garry and I want to speak about, one of the matters is you need to know who you're dealing with and get the signatures from the right parties. We'll start with the buyer and identity of the buyer. And oftentimes it's obvious, but it's prudent on you and your clients to clarify who are the actual buyers. Part of that consideration that you should take into account is the mortgage and financing, because the parties who are getting the financing are the ones who are going to close and take title. So you may want to ask a further question to inquire about who actually needs to take ownership.
You know, Evan, I'll step in here. You're going to see how Evan and I sort of were like a tag team wrestling.
Well, that's beautiful.
team.
It's great to see two aspects, right?
And
Because you and I both know there's two sides to every coin,
absolutely.
right? And there's two ways to handle everything.
So Evan made a great point, and I think the key, certainly from a buyer perspective, is to start with the mortgage working back. If I'm acting for a buyer and financing is really involved, is going to be involved, I want to know, one, have they received or have a pre-approval, which is essential today. Two, who qualifies for the mortgage? If you end up putting two people on as buyers and then later only one buyer qualifies, then you got to start going back and amending. So I think that you have to line up your ducks, as they say, make sure everything, sort of the puzzle pieces are coming together. Do they need a mortgage? Pre-approval. Who is approved? How long their pre-approval is for? Those are some of the questions you got to be asking. And I think I want to step back one step. What I've noticed, I've been doing this for well over 40 years. You got to be careful. Everything you do, it's so easy to make a careless mistake. Getting the names right, getting the purchase price, the closing date. You know, you don't want to have 2022 for a closing date where we're in 2023. Silly stuff, stupid stuff. You got to check on it. From buyer and seller perspective, you got to know who your clients are. You check them out. You got to know who I'm dealing with. You know, and there's, for a seller, for example, there's a lot of pre or prep work. For example, older home, maybe they should be getting a house inspection, seeing what the problems are in the house before they list it. Get things fixed. You may even want to have a list, like an inspection report there for a buyer to see. Although the buyer really couldn't sue on that because it's not made out to the buyer, it's a seller inspection. So really the prep work is really essential. From your buyer's perspective, your seller perspective, how many mortgages? What kind of mortgages? Is a line of credit? Is your mortgage open? Like what sort of prepayment penalty? I've seen too often where an agent may call the bank in conjunction with the seller. They find out that the prepayment is $4,000, and then when you get the payout statement, it's $45,000.
I'll share with you another horror story. We've seen a couple of cases lately where we get in an agreement to act on a sale, only to find out the purchase price doesn't cover the debt. It doesn't cover the mortgages to be paid out. A little homework beforehand to verify some of that would have been informative.
So let me ask you a question. So let's start with the buyers, right? So Joe, seller, or Mary, agent, are working with Mary and Joe, for instance, right? So they should always take their photo ID, their license, right? Identifying who you're working with, guys, because there's so many people, and we have 35 different nationalities on our team right now. So, sometimes spellings and this, that, whatever, different. Because I see sometimes someone is acting in behalf of that person, and then you find out that's not, meanwhile you've been dealing with that person, but that's not really the person that's buying the actual home. So you should always, 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 at an early stage, get photo ID, because you need to know if you're working with that person or with that person or that person. Because, and I see it so often, I'm working for a friend. Like I had a lady, I've just listed a property for 100 acres for $14.8 million. So the lady was helping the owner, and she clearly stated that to me. And I said, well, just to do anything, I have to meet everybody. So I met everybody, and sure enough, that's the way it worked out, and it was all truthful. But, if I just dealt with her and her only, I have nothing, right? I have no listing, I have no legal facts. So it's imperative at a very early stage, if you're going to work with a buyer or a seller, that you get ID to identify who they actually are. Listen, total stranger, I walk up and your name is John Doe. Well, guess what? And I find out it's not John Doe, it's somebody else. I'm supposed to be dealing with John Doe. So imperative that you get the proper legal who you're working with for the get-go. Because obviously, as he mentioned, mortgages, title searches. I mean, everything that you're going to do. It's basically fraud if you're not dealing with the right people. So that would be the first thing.
Absolutely.
Right.
You should be getting a passport for a buyer. You have a 2-year foreign national ban. So you got to make sure that the person you're acting for is able to buy. If they don't have a Canadian passport, do you look at a PR card. But you got to be really, really careful. Now, you got to keep track of how the laws are changing. Now, for example, there were amendments, I think, in March, where someone on a work permit with at least 183 days can purchase. But they have to pay the foreign tax, NRST.
Well, they still pay the foreign tax.
Yes.
Okay.
So you really got to be careful. You got to be mindful of everything. Failing, you call us.
That's why they're here. It's so important because, guys, there's supposed to be 1.5 million people coming into Canada in the next year and a bit, right? It's Liam's birthday also. Hi, Liam, happy birthday, right? So he just got a new bike. You got to ride it faster, Liam. Get here on time, right? So it's imperative, guys, when you're dealing with these people, even with your sellers. Remember, your sellers could have foreign tax if they're selling, right?
Absolutely, a non-resident.
Non-resident. There's foreign tax there. So a lot of, when you're talking 25%, you're not talking a few $1,000s. You're talking a price of $1 million or $2 million, 25%. That certainly adds up. $25,000 for $1 million, $50,000 for a $2 million property. Whether you're buying or selling, that's a lot of money all of a sudden that's thrown into the equation. So if someone's getting financing, are they getting financing for the $1 million, or are they getting financing for $1.25 million, right? Because now there's an extra $25,000 or $1.05 million, or $2.05 million if it's $2 million, right? So these are things that, working with a mortgage broker, that you also need to be working with a good mortgage broker, that they're getting the proper finance. And I don't try and do any of the finance, and I just always send them to a mortgage broker and let them deal with it. And then we have to find out if they got that they got the 25%. So there is some exceptions. What about vacation properties and stuff? I don't think that falls into place for that, does it?
I think it does. I mean, I think that I would have to go through those very specific rules. But before I forget, fraud has become a huge issue.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying.
Mortgage fraud, ownership fraud. If you are going to a showing, or you're going to be putting in an offer for a buyer, and there's a tenant there, you got to be really careful today, because right now there are groups that, they'll get one team member to lease out the place so it's easy to get people in to show, and then another member pretends to be the actual owner. And we're looking at mortgage and ownership fraud as being a multi-billion-dollar problem. Huge, huge problem. So with tenants, you got to be careful. You got to be mindful, like when you're going through a home, and you got to look around, even whether from a seller's agent perspective. Look around, see, are there family photos? Gives you an idea. About a year ago, we had an issue where a gentleman is on title, sole ownership, says he's not a spouse, sells the house. 2 days before closing, the wife comes home. She was overseas. Of course, she wouldn't sign spousal consent. And you can imagine 2 days before closing, she's asking why everything's packed up. So those are the kind of problems. Look in the house. Be mindful of, you see what looks like mother, father, and kids, but, there's someone else in the house. So being mindful.
Here's a good one that is a good question for you. So what I'm seeing lots of times now, an older parent might be their only one left or two. Like one of me and one of the other agents are working one right now. The lady is going to go into a home, and the one son, I think he's already has power of attorney, whatever. So they're trying to get the second son onto that also, because we're going to sell the property. But I said, you're better to both be on title, because, he might be a good brother now, but sells the property, might not be such a good brother when it's sold, right? So you have to make sure that everybody is signed off on any legal document. And if they just sign off, and if she's not, it's like if she's got dementia or something, right, it's not going to hold, correct?
Correct. I mean, for proper authority, for signing power, you have to verify a power of attorney for property. Our office or any legal office can prepare it. There's forms online you can download, but that's to document the authority. And like Daryl's saying, the party giving the power of attorney, they have to have capacity. That's the number one requirement.
Right.
Now,
on the topic, before we move on to maybe the next area.
I just want to, if you're the agent acting for a buyer and the agreement is being signed by seller under a power of attorney, you got to get a copy of it. And we've had, certainly I know of 2 cases where seller agent says, I'll get it to you. It was never given, and deal fell apart because the seller, there was no power of attorney, and it was the wrong seller. Both agents, they lost their license because they didn't produce and they didn't get a power of attorney. You got to get a copy of it. When we prepare powers of attorney in our office, and we don't charge for it, if we're acting on the transaction, like we want to make sure everything is good. So we'll have 2 people to witness. We'll get all the IDs, staple it together. It's like a little package. We'll give 2 to the client. We'll keep 2 in case we need to put on title. And we give the agent 2 so that there's copies to give out.
On a similar topic, powers of attorney, wills and estates, there's special cases of estate sales and an estate being the seller. And we've seen lots of complications there. Again, who's your client in that case? It's the estate of John Doe, who's the client. And who has authority to sign for the estate of John Doe? It's the trustee for the estate. How do you verify who's the trustee? There's a court stamped paper, a certificate of appointment of estate trustee, and that's your proof. That's your documentation that you would need to get to know who has authority. Where we have seen complications with estate sales is where the property, you may sign the agreement in advance, but you don't actually have the certificate of appointment. And then it's a bit of a race. We're waiting to the closing date to see, are we actually going to get it in to have signing authority for closing, or are we not in a position to close? You may have seen, and you may already use clauses in your agreements that talk about extensions if you don't get the certificate of appointment. There's different ways to deal with them, but you have to identify the issue at the outset of who are you dealing with and who has authority to sign.
Can I ask them a question?
Sure.
Okay. I'm asked very often, can I list a property if there is an estate, the owner is deceased, but we don't have probate. We don't have that appointment certificate.
Now, who's this, the kids?
Can you list it? Do you have to wait? Any answer?
I think he is, because I did one.
You can list it.
Who can list it, though? Here's the thing.
It's with the family or
Yeah,
the
well, that's
children.
what I'm saying. You have to be very clear on who's listing it. Like, a neighbor can't list it. Right?
If there's a will, you want a copy of the will. But you don't need the actual probate paper to clear, to have it. You're able to list it. You're able to sign an offer. But it's going to be conditional upon getting that final paper.
Yeah. We sold a number
And
that
you
way.
got to be very careful, because what happens if you need extensions? You don't want to find yourself in the position, I'm sure Daryl has certain provisions dealing with it. You want to have the ability, if I'm acting for buyer, I want to be able to control the extensions, because I don't want to have a change in the market and then the seller saying, oh, we don't have it yet, we don't have a deal. And then they go relist it for a higher price. By the same token, so as a buyer, I want to extend, but the seller's perspective on it is, I don't want it going on forever. So you got to find that middle ground. You got to be careful.
So normally probate, and it's not, COVID took a lot longer, as we know, everything took a lot longer. But normally 90 days is a safe bet a lot of times.
Unfortunately, you're wrong.
That's why I'm asking.
I would say, every jurisdiction is different. If you're in York region or somewhere perhaps north or east or west of the city, maybe 60 to 90 days. And if you're in Toronto,
Could be 8 months.
all bets are off.
Right? So
Now,
it depends where you're at, right?
But if you have a good lawyer, the lawyer would then would get in the probate quickly and make it like on their cover letter that we have a real estate closing coming up in
XYZ.
this closing date. Can you put a rush on it? And we know that our experience has been, when we do that, we get our probate on time. They'll push it to the top.
Well, I had one, I sold it when the mark was hot, and I sold it. She was my past client, good friend, and she went to Cuba, and she got killed there, right? So the two daughters who I knew, they end up being the power of attorney, but I had to wait. So the people I tried to get an extension who I originally sold it for, they wouldn't extend it. So they walked away from the deal. I had known that I couldn't do anything about it. So then I resold it, and we had to wait for the probate to happen. So what I did is I put the people that bought it, I let them go rent the house out, because otherwise the two young girls are going to have to pay the taxes, the maintenance, and everything else. So I rented it out, and then what I did is I put a clause in there that, we could extend it, I think, 2 times or whatever it takes it's going to get for the probate. And what they paid, the utilities and taxes were on their thing, but what they were paying on would go towards the mortgage. So it was a win-win situation for everybody. So being creative, right? And the market had started to change, and unfortunately, I did sell it for the exact same price, even though the market was starting to come down. So, when you have those probate ones, you sell in a high time, and now the closing's not there, and the guys are sitting there, and the extensions come up, they're going to walk away. Like, who wouldn't? But if it's the other way, they bought in low time, and now it's gone up. Now the sellers are trying to back out. So your dates and who's got signing authority are critical. What is the timeline? What is one extension, 2 extensions, and how long are the extensions for, right? So it's not an extension. It's just not a walk away, right? Because that's what they try and use these things for, that someone can back out of a deal very easily. But as long as you're in them guidelines of extensions and they're following all the things, they couldn't get out of it, right?
Exactly.
So either way. So, you have to make sure both parties are protected, right? It doesn't matter who you're representing, but you want to make sure that you're there to make sure everything goes correctly. That's why we have lawyers to help us to facilitate that, because that's not our expertise. So, as agents, we don't want to get into that part. That's why we leave it up to the lawyers at that stage, right? You're a lot smarter. That's how you keep out of lawsuits.
Another mistake we see agents making, there can be scenarios where your client is not physically present. They may be overseas. There have been a number of cases where an agent acting for a buyer, for example, or even a seller, will make changes, amendments on it. They call the client, can I increase the price? And the person at the other end says, sure, you can add another $50,000. and this is true story. So the agent raises the price, doesn't have it confirmed by email or
No
in any
signing.
way. The agent initials the change, thinking I'm initialing for my client. And then when they try to get fined, and there's no condition for financing, no house inspection condition, and they find out they don't qualify. The buyer, first person they point the finger at is their agent. I didn't tell you to change the price. I didn't give you authority. And the agent didn't have anything to look at, didn't have anything, not even an email. Do not make changes for your client without confirming it by at least a text, an email, something.
Not a phone call, guys. Like if you had to go to RICO, they won't take any of your phone calls. They don't exist. So your hearsay is hearsay. Text or email is the only thing that RICO will look at. I'm going to tell you that right now. Because we had a case with that, and we had a whole thing, because someone tried to play that with one of the agents, but we had a whole ledger on everything with all the texts. We didn't have the emails, but we had all the texts. So you're better off to do emails, and that's what RICO said to us. But they did follow the text, but they tell you do the email. So if you do a text, when you get a chance, follow it up with the email and get it there. That's a good point. Because, listen, everything is great when it's great, but when it goes bad, it really goes bad. Did you hear about that agent got hit? He drank milk
Yes.
out in Vancouver, right? He got charged $20,000 plus a $2,500 fine on top of that. He went into the fridge,
The agent
and he went into the fridge and he drank the milk.
from the carton.
Like, hello, right? Not good, right?
Not good.
So, that's common sense, guys. Do not do that. When you go to someone's house, take your own water, take your own drink. Don't go in their fridge because it's not yours, right? Think of that. So here's another thing. So how can a potential buyer or seller protect their interests when negotiating a real estate offer? How do they protect, like, I'm a seller, now I've sold my house. What is my logical thing that we should be doing as agents and sellers on that end of it?
Acting for a seller?
We're acting for the seller, right? Like I had one, for instance, it's conditional that, we're trying to get the check within 24 hours. They're not providing the check within 24 hours. And they had a little hiccup, whatever. So now we already set a closing date. And now they're we're only going to give you the check if you extend the closing date for 3 more months. So now they want to close in November, December. So right away, my gut is going off like, no, if you can't do this now, and it only took us 3 days in my client's house. We sold in 3 days. So I'm going to my client. I said, we could extend it. You've already bought a house and your closing's in the end of October because we gave them a long closing that they would have that. And now what happens is, now the agents that bought their place in 3 days, they, offered a lot more money than it was asking because it's priced really well, shows well. But now they're trying to hold a gun to their head saying, we're only going to give you the deposit if you extend it by another 3 months, like November, December. So now I got my client that bought firm, and it comes November, December. These guys probably not going to have the money they don't have today, is what I thought. So I said, let's get a mutual release, right? What's your thoughts on that?
No, I agree. A seller's agent, you got to be on top of everything when the deposit comes in. So I remember about 8 years ago, maybe 10, there was a gentleman that was buying a house for his mother, and he was going in the Forest Hill area, and it was Friday, and he would give a check for $500,000. Let's say he was buying a house for $5 million. He gave a $500,000 check deposit, which really the brokerage couldn't do anything with until Monday. Except Friday, he kept going to more houses to buy. He ended up buying 10 houses, gave out $500,000 checks, and then Monday, Tuesday, they all went NSF.
Of course.
Crazy. But simply because you have a signed agreement as seller agent, your work doesn't end. follow up with the other agent, like assuming the deposit is paid on time. Follow up. How's the financing going? What's doing with the inspection? You got to make it work. You just don't sit back and like, oh, closing's not for 2 months. I'll phone 3 days before. You tell the other agent, let's be working together. If you have issues, call me. But you got to stay on top of your conditions if they're being waived as such.
I want to go back to deposits, though. I just had a case where a client came to me and he was actually sued. He comes to me with a lawsuit. That's not my area of expertise, but he comes with a lawsuit and says, I was going to buy this house. I changed my mind. I didn't pay the deposit. And then he got sued. And I'm trying to educate my client. You have to pay the deposit when you're a buyer. Now, let's think of the buyer perspective. You sign an agreement of purchase and sale. It's a binding legal agreement. It says I will give the deposit in 24, 48 hours. And he didn't do it. He thought, I can change my mind. I didn't pay.
Is a deposit consideration? Yes. Can a buyer say, get out of a deal saying, I didn't pay the deposit, therefore I'm out? We don't have an agreement. No. Thank you.
See, this is a great question. I'm glad it was brought up because I was going to bring it up. Because if all the things that I see most common is exactly that, especially in a hot market, there's multiple offers, so the adrenaline's flowing and you're saying, I got to get that place, I'm going to bid this, I'm going to bid that. And now that buyer's remorse sets in the next day and it's like, oh my God, they were asking 800 and I paid 950 for it. They're asking $1 million, I paid $1.2 million or whatever it was. And now I don't feel I want to pay that anymore. So they haven't given the deposit. So now they're going, no, well, we're just going to walk away from this. And most likely they bought it firm because in a multiple offer situation that, there's no conditions pretty much. And they probably bought it firm. So of all the things and we've come across this quite often, even with us, right? And, one of the things I say to my sellers at that point in time is, you know what, if these guys are going to be such idiots now and cause that much grief, how are we going to force them to close the property? We're going to have the closings like 3 months, say, whatever day it's negotiated. But you're going to probably have to go to a long legal battle because legally, as they're telling you, that the money deposit doesn't have to be there. It's a firm offer. So I bid 1.2, the place is 1 million. I'm still obligated to come to 1.2 on closing, correct?
Absolutely.
Right? So really, at that point in time, the buyer has to renegotiate to get out of the deal. Right?
Right.
So he could lose his deposit, which the deposit isn't there, and that's why you got no deposit, so I don't have a deal. But you, as the selling agent, or even as the buyer agent, you have to realize it is a deal. So when I call these agents up and say, oh, we're not giving you a check, I go, really? I said, what does that mean? You're already in default, but you still have a legal binding thing. Did you speak to your lawyer yet? Because they're going to tell you you have a legal binding contract, right? So always, guys, always remember, whether you're the buying end or the selling end, that you're following up. It's so crucial. So we were following up where this check is. So I was talking to the guy right up until 11:30 last night, and he's trying to negotiate with me with a 3 month longer closing. And I'm going, well, I don't really think that's really going to work, right? I'm not going to advise it to my client. And if I'm not going to advise it, chances are they're not going to take it. So, we had a conference with our clients, and they said, no, we're not doing that. They want to move in a certain time. So I said, we're only 3 days on the market. We'll go sell it to somebody else. But let's sell it to someone else that's not going to play games. Guys, if you think there's an issue, if your gut is telling you think there's an issue, most likely there is. I can tell you that right now. They say women's internet that get that, but you got to get a gut feeling. If you're in this business, you got to have that sense of there's something that's making you, this doesn't seem right. It is not right. Then you got to dig deeper and you got to go start layering it, because we're there to protect whoever we're with, the seller or the buyer, whichever end we're protecting. We need to do it. And if there's major issues, then we got to call Garry and Evan or whoever we're going to call, right? But you can't sit there and just let it pass by and hopefully it'll straighten out. It won't straighten out. It will only fester and get bigger. So the quicker you get a problem, the faster you can resolve the problem. You know, that's why we have title search, right? Mm-hmm. You know, normally, how long is that, would your thing say? We normally do at least 2 weeks out, right? A minimum that we want at least 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. What would you advise for the agents if they're putting on there for title search as a buyer?
I would want a title search to be at least, if I could, 2 weeks before closing, because if something comes up,
something else pops up.
It gives us time to deal with it.
But I'll add, any issue that goes to title, if there's a new mortgage, a lien, a judgment that goes on after the title search, we can bring it up right to the moment of closing. But as Gary's saying, it's a matter of discovery. If we did our title search, we'd search again before closing, but we may find out only at the last minute.
Listen, preemptive work is really important. I put this out to you, to your team.
Yeah, everybody on the audience.
If you're acting for a seller, we can do a search for you to give you an idea how many mortgages are on title. Is there construction lien? Is there something unusual on title? If you're going to buy, you got to remember, if you're acting for a buyer, why is your client buying it? Are they buying it to renovate, put on an addition, demolish, put up a new house? We have many agents that will do a search for them, and they'll find out, oh, there's 3 mortgages. I only thought, I was told by the selling agent there's only 1 mortgage. Oh, there's an easement. We have seen like storm easements that go right through the middle of the land, which isn't good if you're going to demolish and put up a new house.
Or if you want to put a swimming pool in there.
Or a swimming pool.
I'll add on that note, if you look at the provision for title and what the buyer's expected to receive, they're to get good title, but there are exceptions. And one of those exceptions, as Garry was saying, was stormwater or sewers or bell lines, telecommunication lines. So a buyer has to take title subject to that. So if the buyer's intention is to construct and build, demolish a swimming pool, whatever it may be, you need to know what's there in advance.
And it's so simple. We're able to do a search literally in 5-10 minutes. So getting a search done. Now, Geo Warehouse is good, but it's not the same as the government printout. Geo Warehouse that many agents use.
Well, most of us use Geo Warehouse.
It's fairly good. Yeah. But if, we have agents that are acting for certain clients that want to develop, they want to know the easements. They want more information that we're able to give them that they can't get from Geo Warehouse. It is so simple. Really, you should be doing that kind of work on every deal. When we see with a seller, very often, agent takes on the work. Then they find out afterwards that there's a power sale, that there's 2 mortgages, that there's not enough money to pay out everyone, that there's writs of execution, that there are property taxes owing. When it goes bad, it really goes south. So you got to be careful. I want to go back. Evan and I have sort of made a few points.
Okay.
On deposits, for example, I'm starting to see a lot of cases, when the market gets tighter, and listen, we got to make a living. We want to get deals, but you got to be careful from a seller point of view that your deposits are not too small. I think there's a sort of a rule, 5% deposit.
Yeah.
Okay, but for example, we had a buyer client that property was $500,000. $500,000. They paid $2,500 deposit. Financing didn't work out. They walked. Now, granted that if the property got resold, that they're open to a lawsuit to get sued. But at $2,500, I don't have any incentive to try and make it work. If I have granted a higher priced home and I got $200,000 deposit, I'm not going to walk away from 200,000. I'll get a lawyer and I'll fight for some sort of settlement. You got to be careful of that. Also,
Where's the deposit come from? See, did you get that asked?
well, now we are.
Yes, right?
Now we are.
Where's the deposit
Or
coming from?
If we get money coming in, if we're acting for a buyer of money, especially if it's coming overseas, we get the bank. I got to sign papers as well. What was the source of the deposit? If I'm getting $1 million wired to us, I'm always concerned that we're going to have those monies frozen.
So what we're seeing a lot of, and you would see it more than us, but I find that, the parents now are helping with the deposits much more. So let's say I'm the parent, you're my son, and I'm giving you like the $50,000
Can I just
deposit.
say something? Don't listen to what he's
I'd be so lucky, right?
So I'm giving you the $50,000. So it's legal that I give my son or my daughter a $50,000 deposit. But where should it come out of my account or should it be coming out of their account? Right?
Interesting point.
Because I see red lights with the banks and stuff like that, right?
And what happens if children are living together or just married and you're giving all this money and the marriage doesn't work out?
But they don't even get married.
That's another.
That's a podcast unto itself.
Yeah.
The next one I actually want to speak about.
No, but what's the answer on that?
What's the answer?
The answer, like if
would
it's
be
a
more-
parent is giving the deposit money, right? Because that's what's happening more and more as the market gets tighter. It's the hardest thing for anybody right now to buy is coming up with that deposit. Listen, the rents have gone like to here. So anyone renting, I mean, you should be looking to buy. If you can afford to rent, you can afford to buy. So you got to find some magic wand to get that enough savings to get that deposit, whether it be 10 or 20%, that whatever you're buying at, right? So
Daryl, I think this is a bigger issue for the lender, quite frankly. And oftentimes what we see on our end on closing is a gift letter. And the lender may want to see the funds hit the account of the actual owner,
That's
the
what I'm
child taking title in advance. From our end, it's not as big of an issue, but from the lender's perspective, with that condition, the gift letter and timing, they're going to want to see it.
Where I have the issue is I act for a number of clients who are overseas and we're getting monies wired in, and I have to know what the source of those
that's
monies are.
that's the bigger issue, getting the wired money in from overseas.
And
It's
please
FinTrack, right?
remember, you got to tell your clients if there's bridge financing going on, do it early. Get things done. I would prefer that you tell your seller who's buying, buy first, get a bridge loan if you're able to manage it, then close your sale later. Having and invariably, they say Murphy's Law, that the buy sell on a Friday before a long weekend, you always got a problem. You don't get the money in. And wiring of funds today, very difficult. If we're wiring out funds for a buyer, if it's not out before 3 o'clock, good chance you will not close.
So
And you got to be on top of that. You may say it's not my job, but it is your job. Where is the pet going? Have you arranged for the mover?
it's not a good idea to have your closing on a Friday of a long weekend, because your chances are you could run into issues, and then it has to come up on Tuesday. So we just had one like that.
We're coming up to one.
That the same situation had about the financing, whatever. So it got delayed for 4 or 5 days. The guys had to go they took all their stuff out already. They said had to go to a hotel for 5 days, right? So, it's so important that you really check it out. Your dates are so crucial. Get a calendar, and then sometimes you get on your phone and you don't realize. So you have to know when the holidays are. Like, don't
Absolutely.
listen, instead of closing on Friday, close on a Thursday. It's a lot easier for the lawyers, right? So, to you it means nothing. But to the buyers and sellers and the lawyers, it means everything, right? So make sure you look at the dates. So the other thing is about closing costs. So, the builders now whether you're buying new for your live-in or for investment, the caps. Tell them how important it is to get caps, because tell them about the hidden surprises without caps and how much money they could spend over and above without them even knowing.
The good thing about us is that we have so many years experience behind us. We have all these war stories. I remember when Emerald Park, the one on Yonge and Shepherd area, and I remember we were getting caps on everything except, I think it was levies, like park levies, and maybe section 37.
Trees.
So long story short, at the last moment, builders were coming out and saying, like, we were getting adjustments, and we were looking at 35 to 40,000 more because there was no caps, but the builder was not capping them.
No, they don't. The
And
builder
we
doesn't cap
had-
it. The builder doesn't
We had
cap it.
so many problems on that. And if you're doing assignments, we won't get into much on assignments, but if you're acting for an assignee, the one that the ultimate buyer, you got to look at the original
Contract.
agreement and see, has it been capped? I'm telling you, if your client gets surprised, you'll get the first phone call. The lawyer will get the second phone call at any hour.
And the client will expect you to pay for that surprise, guaranteed.
Absolutely.
And 30 and 45,000 is not a little bit of surprise. So you've already gone to here on your budget, right? What your qualifications the bank will give you, what your family may have given you, you're already maxed out. And now you haven't even considered closing cost, right? People just think, I'm going to close it. I might have my land transfer. They got that figured out. But outside of that, they don't look at new developments, guys. What is the average now? Let's say for $1 million or 1.5, what would be roughly the average closing cost on a new development? Do you have an average for that?
Like legals or builder?
Well, from the builder, what could they tack on? Like, you got your land transfer tax.
You got to look at least 25,000. With caps, another 25,000.
Yeah, I would say so. And it really depends on the area, which municipality
Toronto,
it's in.
you got double land tax,
There's land
right?
transfer tax times two. The area, the size of the development will really impact what some of those development fees are. The good news, if you want to say there's some good news here, is for condominium pre-construction agreements, there's a 10-day cooling off period. Get your client to speak to a lawyer, review it with them, make sure they understand what some of these clauses mean. Freehold, you don't have that same luxury, but if you can get it reviewed with the client and lawyer, at least before the closing date, so they can prepare and budget and plan so it's not a surprise. Oftentimes when we get notice of closing from builders, we're given 2 weeks notice, we're given 30 days notice. To come up with that chunk of change on short notice is hard for anyone.
Guys, that land like the closing costs for new homes, it can be so enormous. So with condos, you're blessed with a 10-day cooling. You need to make sure, if you're the agent, that you're making sure the client is getting a hold of that lawyer ASAP, because it's imperative that they get it capped. So at least when they're doing all their financing, do all their calculations, they know what they got to pay out. Because guarantee 90% of the people don't have an extra $45,000 on closing. So the chances are it's not going to close. There's going to be issues with virtually every aspect of it. So people think, I'll get the lawyer later. No. Take preemptive safeguards and get it. Listen, anytime I bought a new place, I call Garry right away and I said, go over the contract, right? Do I know the contract? I should, as an agent buying for myself. But right away I send it to him and I give it to him. And I take his advice and I follow his advice 100%. So, the average person doesn't have the knowledge that I may have. And if I'm going for my lawyer's advice, I advise everybody should go to their lawyer for their advice, right? So if I'm starting to look or I'm thinking of buying, I always ask agents, do you have a lawyer already that's going to represent you, right? Because they really should. And as agents, we can't just say one lawyer, so we'll give them 3 lawyers' names or whatever. These are 3 good lawyers that I would recommend, and I would advise picking one of them. But you can pick whoever you want. But it's imperative that you get the lawyer involved early. They're here to help you, help the buyer or the seller, whatever end you're working on. Or sometimes if you're doing double end, you're putting yourself more on a plateau than anybody, right? So get to the lawyers early versus later, because you can save a lot of issues and a lot of problems by getting there. So especially for new developments, I think they need to
100%.
get to you guys like immediately.
I want to make another point on deposit. Have any of you had an offer where the buyer was taking in trust or a company was buyer? On those deals, get the highest deposit you can. Because if the deal doesn't go through, who do you sue? A company can have no assets, or if it's in trust, it's for someone else. So the only money your seller may be able to get their hands on is the deposit money. Another point on multiple offer scenarios, highest price is not always the best. If you're acting for a seller, you got to know who that buyer is. Are they a young couple who just got excited, their dream home, and they won't get financing? A particular buyer, is their money here? Or are they looking to bring money overseas here? And multiple offer, always keep, if you're acting for a seller, keep your second best offer close, because you may have to go to that next offer.
Because that's the next day. We were overexcited. We really want to back out of the deal, right? So that, guys, you may don't think that happens. It happens a lot, especially when the market is on fire, that they're over pumped up, but really they're not qualified to go to that higher price. The next day you're looking for the check and they're stalling you for 2 days, and then they're trying to walk and say you don't have a check. So you can go try and do a court case, or you can try and negotiate them. But me, I just tell my sellers, like, let's get out of this thing, because it's going to be a big lawsuit, and then you're going to be stuck. So we're only 2 days or 3 days or 5 days on the market, and it's hot enough. But if the market is changing, you may not be so willing to let somebody out of there so quickly, because now when you have a house first go on the market, it's the most exciting it's ever going to be. So now a week has gone by for offer dates, and now a few more days have dragged by, and then you got a weekend in there. It's almost 2 weeks. So now the house is not looking so sharp and so clean. It's like staying up all night. I said to one of the girls, I want to do a picture with you. They got a 4-month-old baby. They said, no, because I don't look my best right now, right? It's the same as whatever you're trying to sell. After 2 weeks on the market, it doesn't look as best when it first came out. It's not as fresh. It's not as clean. So, little things that you don't even think about, but as a veteran, you realize, hey, now it could be an issue. We just sold at this price. We may not be able to get to this price now. And that happens quite often.
It does. I don't know how much time we have
Yeah.
left, but I'd like Evan.
No, we're going to take questions anyway. I told them they would have to stay a little longer.
We got to address at least what
I
we
want
see.
the rental items.
The number one annoyance issue we see today is, I'll call it 3 related elements, which are chattels, fixtures, and rental items. Okay, we're talking about the personal property and the other items on the land that are either included or excluded in the price. The biggest culprit here for us is rental items. If sellers conveniently sometimes forget they even rent something. And that's an important question.
We just had that.
Yeah.
Because normally everybody we take in configuration, hot water tanks are rental. It's almost a given, right? But then you got alarm system that people are not taking. They have a contract for alarm system. But some of these people...
I've seen furnace.
That's
I've
what I was
seen
gonna say.
windows.
Yes.
I've
Air
seen
conditioning.
I've never
solar
seen
panels.
windows.
I've seen solar panels.
I've never seen windows.
I-
Wow. Really?
I've seen some
But
weird
furnaces
things.
now become a big issue. Furnaces and
Furnaces
air
are big.
conditioning. Because the problem is, you could go buy a furnace for $4,000 or $5,000. But you go rent it, I had one that was a $2 million thing, but the market was hot, thank God, because they had spent, it was during COVID, $40,000.
And
40,000, and we had to negotiate with the buyers, take it or leave it, because the market's so hot, and I had to get them to sign off.
Yeah.
Because my sellers didn't tell me that till after, and then they signed off that it is a rental, and they'll accept it.
So what should a seller agent do?
seller agent has to inquire with your client what items are rental, and if there's any uncertainty, go one step above. Ask for their utility bill. You know, on
Ask
your
for a copy of the contract.
you'll see it on your, Enbridge bill. You'll see a line item for the rental item. So you can ask for that information, right? And if there's any doubt, put it in there. Just list it as a rental, if applicable.
So, for example, if I'm acting for a buyer, I do the reverse, Evan. In the chattel section,
Yes.
I put HVAC,
Yeah,
that it's owned.
correct.
And if we find out later it's a rental, hey, you got to pay it off. So that's what a seller agent would do. Get a copy of the contract, ideally, give a copy to the buyer agent, and buyer agent, what you should be doing is telling your client that they have to assume the rental contract. Because after closing, we get an assumption agreement, we send it over to the buyer's lawyer, buyer says, I'm not going to sign.
And that
And then payments are
Yeah.
coming out of the seller's account.
there's limited recourse in a case like that. You can't refuse to close a multi-million-dollar transaction because someone refuses to sign a lease or you don't get the document from the third party on time. You can't refuse to close. But it'll be an annoyance for everyone, agents, lawyers, seller, buyer, after closing. The problem won't go away until it does.
So here's a question that we've started. I made a form up now that the agents have to go through and ask the sellers and have them sign off. Furnace, air conditioning, alarm, hot water tank, right? So they have to sign off that they either own it or they rent it. So I have their signatures now to say that. So they can't say, oh, you didn't ask us, right? Because the first thing they say is, you never asked us. We told you that. Pinocchio, they told you. Never freaking told you. I can tell you right now. But the other part of the Pinocchio is that you didn't ask it, right? So it's your responsibility, if you're working for the seller, that you need to know what is owned and what is a rental. So you need to do your due diligence. And what they mentioned, Evan said, is check the municipality bills, right? Their Edridge, their whatever it is, cables, whatever, if they're in a condo.
Yeah. I will say, though, if you do that pre-search, if you're acting for a buyer, you can see sometimes there's a notice of an agreement with a finance company, like $4,000, $12,000, that's usually related to HVAC.
Sometimes that's actually your only saving grace as a buyer, because if there's a notice of security interest on title, it's a lien and it's something I can demand removed up until the date of closing. But if there's no notice,
And what happens?
So the
here-
lien, you can
you could actually use the lien against the property as an advantage because you can demand that the seller has to remove
pay
it.
the lien.
Correct. But if
guys,
there's no lien,
hear that? Repeat that, Evan, because guys, this is $1 million nugget right here. I'll tell you right now. I want you to say it slowly for the people actually understand it that are not even here.
So there could be a lien on title, which as buyers, we hate liens on title, but it could actually serve your purpose. If you never agreed to assume a rental and there's the lien on title, I can sit back and demand up until the closing date that the seller remove it. And if they don't, they're in breach of contract. And that is maybe not $1 million, but tens of thousands of dollars
Well,
issue
over a number of years,
right there.
that were
Yes,
touching millions of
yes,
dollars,
yes,
right?
yes.
You know?
Okay, but if you're a seller agent and you did the search and you find the notice, then you know when your seller says, no, I own the HVAC, they're going to say, no, you don't. There's a lien on title. Where's the contract? Yeah. I want to, how many of you worked on a house that's not brand new, like a pre-construction, but someone's been living in the house for a year and then selling? I think that that's not uncommon. today, I always
You get that with the condos, like condo townhouse or condos.
Yeah, or condo townhouse.
Because you're closing.
Or house.
Because you haven't got total title, but you're closing, you got to, that's a big issue.
Okay, but where I'm going with this is that house may be a year old, being sold, so I may not have the HST issue, which is another issue if no one's been living in the house. There are people that will go build a house. They say it's for myself. Oh, I changed my mind, and then I'm going to sell it. So you do have carry-on issues potentially. You have HST issues potentially. What we're seeing is in a lot of these newer houses that were built like infills by builders that were smaller in terms of the number of homes they built, we'll get now, we do get a building report. We just don't rely on title insurance. Very often we're seeing open permits that have not been closed. And we find out, it's like 3 weeks before closing, we're past the title search period. There's a recent case that says that open permits, not a work order, not a deficiency matter, but an open permit, that is a matter that goes to the root of title, which gives me the right to request it be closed right up to the closing date. Because if that's not done and it remains open, you got to go, eventually you got to get an inspection. If there are deficiencies, your buyer's going to pay for it.
And it could be a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of money. In one case, several hundreds of thousands. One case we found out that the builder a year prior didn't properly connect the sewage to the main line, and that line could break at any time. It would have been an environmental problem. The house was 1.5 or 8 million. The potential risk was well over $1 million.
Yeah.
And I promise you, your insurance will not pay that much.
Yours and emissions, right? So that, like you as realtors, how do you know what's under the ground? We're not engineers, so that's why you have to have the lawyers involved and check these things out. So we were talking about HST because this is a big issue that is a very red light, right? That, or when a condo closes, it's not closed, but you get occupancy. So how does all that play in effect for HST and stuff like that, right? So I got a closing on a condo, but it's only occupancy. I'm not getting title. I'm only getting occupancy. So how does that affect with your mortgage and your HST and all that? And principal residence?
Well, okay, you got a lot of issues.
Yes.
I think the first thing is
a
from
lot of confusion.
a process standpoint. With pre-constructions, typically, especially condo, you have an occupancy closing and you have a final closing. On occupancy, all that means is the builder got a occupancy permit from the municipality saying it's safe to live in there. And the agreement is constructed in such a manner that you gotta take possession of it. You're not yet the owner. You're not yet getting your mortgage and signing and start paying your interest payments. You're not at that stage, but you're gonna take possession.
And got to pay.
And you gotta pay. You're not paying your mortgage payments. You're paying something called occupancy fees or interim occupancy fees, which consist of a couple components. You're contributing to the property taxes. You're paying your common expenses that you would have otherwise paid, and the builder gets to charge a little bit of interest on the balance owing, which a number of years ago when interest rates were low, it was forgotten about. And now that interest rates are what they are, I'm telling you, buyers were not expecting to pay as much as they are for occupancy.
We're handling an
But what about for financing? Because, like you said, you can't get the mortgage at that point.
No.
So what happens is, I bought a number of condos, and I know that when occupancy comes, it could be 3, 4, 5, 6 months later till they have final closing. So you're stuck, have to pay it out of your own pocket, these costs. And it's not cheap.
We have,
especially with interest rates.
We have
going
buyers
up.
who are asking us weekly, when's the final closing? I'm going to lose my rate. The rates are going to go up. And we're contacting builders, give us an update. Can we do this sooner? You know, we're just trying to get the best financial position for our client.
I had a client that had a mortgage approval for 1.99. By the time it closed, it was literally 5.95.
Wow. So you're thinking
Being
on a
extended.
big mortgage.
The other thing is on these pre-construction, you got to get a mortgage pre-approval, and they can ask multiple times throughout the process by occupancy closing to final closing. They could be asking for updated mortgage approvals.
And what if you don't give it to them?
You're in breach of the contract, scoop up the deposit money, and they'll resell it.
Really?
Really. And now they have a list of the type of lenders. They won't take private, like a mortgage approval from a private lender. Most of them are either trust, like credit unions and such. By the way, credit unions are good institutions to go to. They're very competitive on rates. Everyone thinks, you know, the top 5, 6 banks. There are other institutional lenders. Credit unions are very, very competitive. They're not like Home Trust, which would be an alternative or B lender.
But you brought up about HST. So on new constructions, HST is payable, right? That's the starting point. It's something we may not think about because on a resale, HST is not applicable. But on the sale of a newly constructed unit, HST is payable. Now, builders are smart. And the agreement of purchase and sale is constructed in a very intelligent, thoughtful manner where the builder builds in an assumption related to the HST rebate. And the builder's assumption is you're going to live there. You or an immediate family member are going to live in the home. And because of that, you qualify for an HST rebate, which is great. That's good news for everyone. However, the builder says, I'm going to keep that rebate.
They always ask for it back.
You don't get the rebate, I get the rebate. And on that basis, on the basis that you qualify and I get the rebate, I'm not charging you anything extra. Okay? However, if you don't qualify because you're leasing it or it's vacant or maybe some other reason, you got to pay me the rebate that I lost, which comes out to about $24,000. Another shock on the closing date your client may find out about. I wasn't expecting that cost. There is a rental rebate they can apply for after closing, but it's now a timing cash flow issue. You're putting out the money, doing your application after, and getting it back much later on.
Yeah, much later.
Yeah.
Right?
On assignments, you got to be careful because the assignee, the ultimate buyer, will not receive that HST housing credit rebate.
So that
They'll
means
have
that
to
the buyer's
apply
gonna get stuck
after
with it.
closing.
The key that the builder will look at, and the CRA, they're just passing along the message, is what's the intention? So when you go to the sales office and you're signing the agreement, they're going to be asking you questions. What's the plan with it? Who's living there? They're going to make a note of that. Today, I had a client in their agreement, somehow it says they're renting it. And the client's begging, no, I'm going to move in. But it says they're renting and they don't care. They don't care that they physically moved in and changed their license.
Because it's what you put on your
It's
thing.
what you put on your sheet. It's what goes into the agreement. And like Garry said, if at any time you show an intention that it's not for personal use because you want to assign it, again, they can say you lost it just because of that.
Yeah, but their policy, because they've had builder's policy, is even if the ultimate buyer, the assignee, is going to live there personally and they may qualify, great. Apply for the rebate after closing. So you got a cash flow issue.
There's a lot of taxes these days, and I'm
I
sure
want to
you've
touch
heard about
2
those.
points before we're going to go to questions. Conditions, all I can tell you, it's market conditions. Whatever the market will allow you. I mean, ideally as a buyer, I really feel politically there should be mandatory conditions for house inspection, for example. We see too many scenarios where someone goes in, multiple offers, hard market, and people can't get an inspection condition in. Same with financing. We see conditions where someone says a buyer that is conditional upon them selling their house. I haven't seen some of those conditions.
There's starting to be
for
a lot
years.
more now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We're putting them in there now.
So my only comment is conditions are dictated by market conditions. The other very difficult area is you're selling a house and there's a tenant in it, and there's trouble getting tenants out. Even if you give them the N12 that I'm a buyer, I'm going to move in, buyers getting the N12 can say I'm not moving, that they will not vacate, that they could force you to go to a landlord-tenant tribunal hearing. That could take 8 months.
Even then, I mean, there's limited ways a landlord can terminate a lease. We know this. One of which, if they or their family are moving in, or perhaps if the buyer or their family are moving in. And like Gary's saying, you may serve the right forms. You give enough notice, and they say, too bad, I'm not leaving. And I have one of these right now. And you apply to the landlord-tenant board, and you're waiting months. Your closing doesn't have months, but you're waiting months for a hearing to get them out.
Listen, if you want to know about landlord-tenant residential law, don't phone a lawyer. Don't phone a paralegal. Phone a tenant. They'll know more about it, the ins and outs, how to deal with it.
They're pros.
Oh,
They have it down pat. Listen,
but you got to understand something from their perspective, especially if you've been there a long time.
Yeah.
And the tenant's on a fixed income. Like, I've seen both sides. And they're paying $1,600 for a 2-bedroom apartment. And now they got to leave. They can't afford to.
you're going to pay $3,200 now.
They can't afford it. Like, I can't afford it. So I'm going to stay here. I've seen where privately a landlord and tenant will come to an arrangement. We'll cover you. If you leave on this date, the N12, we'll give you money to cover your moving and your first and last month in the new place. And then the landlord gives them the money
And then they
in
don't move.
advance, and they still don't move. So I tell them, give it to the lawyer to hold in escrow, and when they move out, they'll get the money then. You got to be careful because, your clients expect you to know everything. You can conference call. You can call Evan and I, conference call us with the client on. We can go through problems, concerns on a conference call. I'd rather do that or look at an offer than deal with the problem later.
That is a big issue, guys. Like, we had Peter DeLisi on a month ago or whatever. And, we heard some of the nightmares out there. So, yeah, you're paying that tenant, you're giving them $5,000, $10,000, whatever number that may be, and they're going to vacate, and then they're not leaving. I know one right now, they sent the owners an N9, and they're a real estate agent, and they were playing a game, whatever, and now they don't want to let anybody in because you got to get the listing, whatever. And the landlord, they said, no, you've given your N9. They can go in anytime.
Yeah. Please, 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 if you're acting for a seller and they want you to take care of the rental aspects, make sure you do it right. Don't say, I sent emails to the tenant saying my client that the buyer's going to be moving in. Give the N12. Because if you don't give the N12 and you say, well, I confirmed it, I gave you a letter, I gave you emails, that's not good enough. You got to start all over.
And every time you start over, it's months, right? So let's take some questions. Let's give them a big hand right now, right?
Thank you, guys.
So Frank, you're the first one. Come up to the mic here, Frank. I have a mic right here. Is that mic turned on?
Yeah, it did.
So come on up here for everybody can hear it.
Oh, before we start,
Hold on.
we only take easy questions.
Frank,
Well,
right here.
it's
Go to the
Frank.
mic.
We planted
Go to the mic.
Frank.
Hi, Frank.
Hi, how are you?
You have the questions?
Yes. I
Okay.
One question, because I want to make sure other people have
One
questions,
question.
right?
The mic doesn't
We
work.
have a list from it.
It's working. It's working? Okay. I have an eviction order in my hand right now.
Okay, I can tell it's not easy.
He's ready.
The eviction order says that I can act on it on August the 17th.
Yeah.
The tenant is on a cat and mouse fight with us right now. And he said he's going to appeal it now. Where is he going to appeal the eviction order from LTB?
Well, not being an expert on residential landlord-tenant,
He will do commercial.
he may
also.
go to maybe divisional court. There might be a superior court that they can appeal to. However, just because they appealed, that eviction order is in effect.
Is in effect.
Get
Okay.
the sheriff, get a process server. These are people that will sleep out in their car all night to catch the people.
Well, I'm sure he would have received it in email from the landlord-tenant court.
If there would be provisions maybe on the form on how you provide service, that may be good enough. But the actual eviction, you may have to get the sheriff involved. You can't do it.
No, I realize that. But if he actually wants to file for an appeal, how long will that process take?
I don't know, but it doesn't affect this order.
It does not
He's
affect
still,
it.
he's still got an order from the court to get evicted.
It's not like you can stay the eviction order while I'm appealing. No.
That's an eviction order from the courts. So they have to follow the court's order.
Okay. Good enough. Thank you.
Next, Frank. Tara. Come up to the microphone, Tara. Then Jay. Do we have any ones from outside, Hannibal? Anyone from outside, if you got any questions, please send it to chat and we'll try and get to them.
How are you, gentlemen? Okay, so I had a client. He was actually a lawyer, but not a real estate lawyer.
Worst clients. Worst.
It's like having a real estate as your client. Your worst clients are your real
Don't
estate
take a
agents.
lawyer as your buyer or seller. Like, don't dance at every wedding.
No, I almost cried a couple of nights, but he's a very good gentleman. But they just want to make sure everything's okay. So when it came to title search, and he's like, "What's a title search?" And I explained it to him, and he's like, "Okay, well, what if there's something wrong with the title search? What happens?" And usually nothing happens. Usually, in Richmond Hill at least. So what do I say? What if something goes wrong with the title search?
Well, I think it's important to know what is going wrong. Like, what are we talking
That's
about?
why you have the title search, because you want to find out any problems that are going to arise. You can't speculate what may arise. That's just speculation. That's why you have the lawyers, and they have a date to do the title search, and that's why it should be at least 2 weeks out to give them time to get it rectified.
No, I get it, but then
you
he's like,
should be
"What
looking,
happens?"
for example, paragraph section 10, for example, has certain easements, rights, municipal agreements. Depending on the problem, the issue, you may not be able to do anything. You may have a real serious problem. The person may say, "I want to put in the swimming pool," and now I see an easement, a hydro easement. They have to accept it because the agreement says there's A, B, C, D in section 10, and easements, utility easements are an
Pretty much
exception.
all houses have a utility easement.
I think if I were in your shoes, two proactive things I would consider doing. Maybe do a title search beforehand if you're acting for a buyer and you have a prospective property. You can answer some of those questions. Two, maybe you flip the question around to him and say, what are your concerns? Like we were saying before about development, pools, fences, secondary units. If you know more about the intention, again, it'll inform the title search a little bit.
So, for example, here again, if you do the search in advance, it costs about $35, $40, generally speaking. If we're working with an agent ongoing and we
Not
see,
a once off.
yeah, like, if we're getting deals, we're working closely with an agent, we get to know your style. Like, we don't charge the agent for $35. It's more time for me to charge and
So you're
collect.
saying do the title
It's
search
just here.
while putting the offer?
You could do it even in advance of the offer.
I'm putting, very often, I'll get a
$35?
call, I get an email, agent says, "I'm putting in an offer tonight. Can you just do a quick pin search and tell me if there's anything
What's
that I should be
outstanding?
aware of?" So, for example, we had a client that was purchasing, and we found 2 old mortgages from 1968 One was 18,000 and one was 80,000. And they had never been taken off title. Well, I got a problem. Well, the seller's lawyer got a problem, but my client has a problem too because they need the keys. They have the mover waiting. I can't say, well, there's 2 old mortgages. We'll wait till next week.
Okay.
No, and we closed, but we had holdbacks.
There may have been another element to the question about what type of issues can come up. So when we do a title search, we're looking for mortgages. We're looking for liens, and liens can come in different shapes. There's
Come from a landscaper.
construction liens, a landscaper or a contractor, a painter, someone who's adding value to the property, even just supplying goods to it. Could put a
Rights
lien
of
on.
way.
There could be rights of way with a
So,
neighbor.
and then he was like, so if there's an easement, I have to go ahead with the
So,
deal still.
Again, very good question. And back to paragraph 10, I believe, of the agreement title, it says you're entitled to good and marketable title of the property subject to the following exceptions, meaning the buyer has to accept them. And in there, you'll see utility easements,
Municipal
agreements, sewers. So in answer to that, yes, if there's a sewer that runs the middle of the backyard, you would have to close.
Now, that particular, I think it's subparagraph D, it says like storm management, sewer type easements. You don't have to accept if it diminishes the value or your use of the land.
But you don't want to be in that position that on closing, you're arguing with the other side about whether this is material or not. I mean, those are cases that end up in court.
I think you also have to ask your client, why are you buying it? Like move in, do you want to demolish? Like what is your purpose?
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Jay?
Actually, I went to the listing presentation a couple days before, and I told the seller your property is worth
XYZ.
$900,000, and he says, Jay, I have a 2 mortgage up to $1 million. You know, first and second, like 600.
I would say goodbye.
You know, so I said, wait a minute. Then you have to be shortfall of 100,000 on the closing.
To start.
Yeah, start. But worst thing, then he says, I like deposit to be payable to the seller. I said, look, it will not go to fly. So how you suggest how to handle? Because I walk out actually. I made an appointment to see him on Saturday.
I'll say anytime in a deal, someone's saying deposit should be paid directly to seller, that is a red flag. I mean, I wanted to talk about
I knew
that
right away.
before.
Yeah.
It should go to the brokerage.
Sure.
It could go to the lawyer, maybe certain circumstance, but never to the seller. The only time you may see it is if you're negotiating extensions and it's a precondition that, buyer has to give something in order to get something. Even then, there's a ton of risk in releasing a deposit.
I got to tell you that we do a lot. I mean, because of market conditions, often there could be extensions, multiple extensions. We work with our clients like we're not deal breakers. We get to know our client, what are their concerns, how difficult the market is. So, for example, there might be, if the market's hot, my client may say, I don't want to extend, okay? Because I can resell it. If the market is not as strong, my client says, listen, I got to sell it. I'm carrying 2 houses. I'll give them a month. So then we try to get an additional deposit, have the deposit released. Like we did one where they're asking for an additional 30 days to close. My client says, listen, I have to make mortgage payments. I got to do various things. So we got $25,000 additional deposit released right away to our client, so we had cash flow to make the mortgage payments, property taxes, to cover the additional 30-day costs. So we work with our client knowing what their concerns are. We can come across tough or we can come across easier depending on what market conditions are and what our clients' needs are.
The other element, I think you really need to look at is there a foreseeable way you're actually going to be able to close with the shortfall, taking into account the shortfall? Where's the money coming from? Is it landed? Is it here? Can you put it with the lawyer so we know we're ready? Have you taken into account all other transaction costs, moving, whatnot?
So should I take that listing with 999 or no?
Okay. Okay, before you do, get writs of execution checked.
Okay.
There could be a judgment. Get a search done. See, maybe CRA has a lien on title.
Verify the mortgages that are on title. He's verbally telling you, I assume, what the amounts are approximately.
Maybe there's a
Verify it.
power of sale.
Chances are it's higher than what he's telling you.
If it's a condo, there could be a condo lien.
No, it's a detached bungalow.
I'm telling you,
No, but he's just
in
saying
bad
if it was-
scenarios, it's like an iceberg. A lot of it is below the surface. Be careful.
Thank
So
you.
do a search,
Okay, thank
right? Ask him to do a search. Give him
Best
$40.
$35 you'll spend.
Any other questions,
I
guys?
think we have one over here.
Come on up. Come on, Rima.
Hello. So a common, very stressful situation that's encountered is when you're closing on your purchase and your sale the same day, and it's
That is
that
a nightmare.
the ripple effect of you're waiting for your buyer to send the funds so that you can use the funds for your purchase. What do you recommend in those types, or like how to avoid that?
Okay, so one, if I'm acting for the seller, I would see if they can afford to do bridge financing.
Yeah.
That's first, the easiest.
1
Let's
or
say-
2 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's say they can't afford it for whatever, everyone's tight. As seller agent, I would be on top of that buyer agent saying, listen, my client is selling to buy. It's on the same day. Please be on top of your buyer client. Make sure they get their mortgage. Make sure, especially if there's no financing condition, like be on top of them. Can they get let's get their mortgage funds as early as possible in the morning. Is the buyer agent, is your client buyer, are they getting private financing or institutional financing?
Here's the reality. As agents, lawyers, we can communicate with the other side, tell them what's going on, tell them the urgency. As a buyer, lawyer, I'm asking for funds first thing in the morning, but there's so many variables out of our control. And you have to tell the client about the process and how it works so they're not surprised. They're waiting at the house they're buying 9 a.m. with keys.
Moving trucks.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's also, again, it's typically like both parties are buying and selling, so it's like they're
this
waiting for
changed.
Well,
the,
listen,
it's
most
like
of the
whole
deals we have,
combo.
Rima, most of our deals we have always been the same day.
Yeah.
I would say probably 90% are, right? So the good thing is it's a lot easier for the lawyers and even the sellers and buyers today than it used to be because you guys have to go before and do all that. Now they can do it all online. So it speeded the process up dramatically. But, the clients have to see, if I'm the seller, I have to see my lawyers beforehand to make sure everything is all signed off and stuff like that. So you as their agent, you have to be making sure you're on top of with your clients. Have you talked to the lawyer? Have they got the arrangement? Because a lot of agents do not get the lawyer information to the deal secretary or whatever from their buyers or sellers, and they wait where they got time. But time is of the essence. The second you've done a deal, you need to be working on them getting the lawyer ASAP. Because otherwise, 1 week out, 2 weeks out, there's no title search. Now the lawyer's wondering, who am I communicating with? Now they've got 2 other transactions coming up that day. So their plate is already like here. So it's some of the onus has to be on the agents to make sure your clients get a lawyer ASAP. And then the lawyers have your lawyer talk to the other lawyer. Have they communicated? Right?
Well, what happens then in those situations where the other party's lawyer is MIA, day of closing?
And boy, that happens
Things-
more often.
Ask
than
them.
I want.
I mean, from a process standpoint, I gotta say, things happen. There are sole practitioners who it's a one-person shop. They may be at the bank doing
Or they had,
the
they
banking.
had a headache or something. Whatever. Car accident.
There's always a reason. We're all human. There's always a reason why someone goes MIA for a couple of hours, and that's the human element to the deal. And what I'm saying, even if you're proactive as agent, we're proactive as lawyer. We're working with other people who, despite our best efforts, there may be delays. And the biggest delays on a same-day closing is movement of funds. Getting funds in the morning from the lender,
Yep.
if I'm acting for buyer, and then transferring over to the seller, that on average takes until 3 p.m. on average on a good day. So you don't have a lot of room for error in cases like
Yeah.
that.
I actually don't close on Fridays anymore because I do it on Thursdays.
Good, thanks.
So
Rima.
that if it doesn't take the whole weekend, but
Another trick there is don't do the last day of the month, even if it's a Wednesday. I mean, everyone does it, and it just makes the process harder for everyone involved.
I mean, we've had ends of months where we can have 35 closings on a Thursday and 35 closings on a Friday, and we're not builder lawyers in the sense that we're closing 100 condos. But 70 deals we're closing over 48 hours. There's a lot of
lot of
that's
work.
a lot. Yeah.
But if I'm acting for a buyer, I want to know the seller's lawyer as soon as possible, because if I have a problem, if I have a seller that now has remorse, they don't want to sell it. What do I do? Now I don't have a lawyer to deal with, so I got to start serving letters on the seller agent and the brokerage.
So the same thing. Here's a good point. And, as agents, listen, I've been 34 years in the business. I know most of the agents out there, and I have rapport with most of them. So I know if I'm dealing with a good agent or an agent that causes problems or whatever the case might be. So that's why it's good, when we were just at that event last week for 2 days, networking. So you're getting to meet other agents and have better rapport and faces, because sometimes now everything's just by Zoom and whatever. But I love that face-to-face, because now when you got to do an offer or anything like that, it's a lot easier. Lawyers are no different.
Yeah.
They listen, I have a circle of lawyers that, 34 years I've been dealing with a number of lawyers, so I know that he's going to get along with that lawyer and he'll get along with that lawyer, whatever the case. And then you're going to have a hard-ass lawyer that they've had nothing but a bad track record with, right?
That is very true. Yeah. But also, like with agents, you get to know styles, and you get to, at some level, trust other people, which is, it makes life
imperative.
easier.
It's imperative.
But for lawyers, same thing.
Yeah.
I've been out 43 years, we'll say. I know a lot of lawyers.
Yeah.
And we sort of talk, wow, real estate market's tough and this and that. But when I tell them that the funds will be there by 6, give us another hour. Sure, Gary, no problem. I trust you.
But if they don't know each other, they've
And
never done business
right.
together, now red lights are starting to come up.
The other thing is, I suppose I'm saying it to pat ourselves on the back.
Well, that's why you're here.
for it. Yeah.
I'm going to give you the pat. I think
Thank
you
you.
guys are
Thank
amazing,
you.
right?
So over the years, I pretty much know all the builder lawyers.
You know most
at
of the
all
agents.
but builder law firms, like I can go through, there's 6, 7 major firms, and I know those lawyers. I even know the clerks. On the Valentine's Day, we send flowers, not to the lawyers, but to the clerks. And they'll say, thank you very much, but I can't give you any special consideration. I don't want you to.
We just appreciate
But when
you.
I called them, can you give me 1 day extension? The flowers work.
They remember who they are.
Because they forget the clerks. It's always the lawyer. Treat the clerks well, okay? Because everyone forgets them, but they do a lot of the difficult work. But I can phone up a lawyer. We have on many occasions, like Delzato with Tridell.
My good buddies there.
I could go to Brady's for a number of their builders. I mean, Goldman Spring, Harris Schaefer, Owens Wright, Denton's. Like, I could go through them. And I could phone the lawyer, like, I know that their daughter is in law school. Like, we know our families.
Yeah.
And listen, can you do me a favor? Can you speak to your client? They're charging 12% interest for they're charging 12% interest. We need a 1-week extension or 10 days. And they're charging $175 a day on top of it. If it doesn't close, like you're only giving me 10 days. We only found out about final closing 20 days ago. And you know what the finance market is like. Give me a break. He says, I know my client, the builder, is tough guy, but let me get back to you. He'll call back and he said, listen, we won't charge $175 a day. We'll charge the 12% interest. We'll give you 2 weeks, not 10 days. It'll be okay. You get those,
You
that
have to.
type of rapport,
Right.
relationship. And a lot of the young lawyers who are not out long just haven't had the experience
No, they haven't
or
built
the
up that
ability
rapport yet.
to build a network. But network is so important.
Whether you're a real estate agent or a lawyer, networking. Guys, I'm the king of networking. I go anywhere, you see people taking pictures with me, whatever the case might be. I make it a point to try and talk to everybody. So you need to do the same thing, even with the lawyers, right? So, good question.
Now, I got to tell you about Daryl. Not only does he have the experience, he has the people skill, he knows how to get a deal done. But Daryl is probably one of the most generous people I know. Really.
I didn't pay him for that. But he is too. Listen, I can say the same thing because we do a lot of charity work together. So we know who's putting out there.
We've dealt with women's shelters, and we deal with a lot of food banks, and, just going through and
Always give back, guys. It's so important.
It
I
goes
can't say it
around.
from him and me or Evan. There's a lot of people that are struggling, and they have no control of it. If we're out there doing good business and we're giving back, it's just karma, right? My guys did Stomp the Stigma at my club the other day. I couldn't make it. It's a very expensive thing, but I'm normally there. And I want to go there because I'll normally go, if I couldn't make it, I'll normally go at night and donate something. So I'll see Bob and his brother, they're my clients actually even, that I'll end up giving them something later on, right? So it goes a long way. A little of something is better than nothing, right? So, just always treat everybody with respect and see who you can help out. It's so important.
it will come back. Don't do it because it'll come back,
Yeah,
but
don't do
it
it.
will come back. You're going to see now going forward a lot of people who have homes are hurting because they had to renew their mortgages. And some people are paying substantially more, and they're barely getting by. And I don't know what the number of power sales. I went 2 years without any power sale. Now I'm getting 3 a week. We're seeing that people are suffering. So you got to deal with that. If you're putting an offer in on a power sale, acting for a buyer, there is a specialized schedule that you'll be required to do. You got to be careful.
Yeah,
Call
right
us.
now it's getting a lot tougher. Like, investors, anybody that had the low rates, and now you got to renew your mortgage, right? So it's costing a lot of people a lot different. So, the banks I know have been negotiating with some people, giving them a longer amortization period and just paying off the interest and no principal, just to keep them in their home, right?
If you do have a client that you're listing for and you have it on the market and there's a lender that has a power sale and it's a race, call us. I'm doing one now where I got a copy of the listing, I got a copy of the offer. Scotia has already given out their power sale. They're ready to go to the next step. And I need a firm offer. So I got a firm offer. I show it to Scotia. Again, relationships. And they know me. And I said, listen, we're closing in 2 weeks. You don't want the house. You really, they're not in the business of collecting houses. Here's a firm offer. We're going to close in 2 weeks. Just back off on not doing any further and incurring more costs for the seller. And usually it'll work.
So, guys, we're going to wrap this up. So, Garry, where could they get a hold of you and Evan? Tell them on screen, give them your telephone number where they can reach you guys and your email. And we'll put it
Okay.
in the link anyway and give it to
Sure.
everybody. But I'd just like to have it on here for everybody can have
On
it.
my card, there is my cell number. You can call me at 416-720-1443. Please do not call. I put my cell phone under my pillow. Try not to call me after between 12 and 4 in the morning. Please don't call me. You can call me before.
I had one at 12:36 the other night.
although I usually start work at 4 in the morning, but I got up early at 3 and I was giving replies on emails and stuff. And like, by 10 o'clock, people, wow, you work hard. But yes, please call. We're in a service business the way you are.
Give me your email also.
You
So
can get that.
our office number,
Oh, he won't give you the cell number.
He's
'cause
smart.
he-
I don't either.
No, because he's recently married.
our office number is 416-224-0808. My extension 249.
Give the
Our
email
email for myself is eshapiro@garryshapirolaw.com.
Gary,
Same for
2
him,
R's.
just with the G for Gary. We have some material on the table if you're here, and if you're not, it'll get posted in the video.
Yeah, we gave you gift cards that has an expiration of September 2023. Don't worry about the date. We will honor it if you say it's from Daryl. Right. You're from Daryl. What we did before, I want you to know we do powers of attorney. If we're working on the deal, there's no charge. We do notarization. If you're changing your name for RICO,
Marriage
whatever,
or whatever.
we'll do that for you. There's no charge. Listen.
Building relationships,
Yeah.
right? So I
I gotta say it.
go ahead. You got the mic.
I'm licensed to do weddings.
What about divorces?
I do. Listen, I do.
It's more costly
weddings.
getting divorced than
I
it is
do.
getting married.
Okay, first of all, for the weddings, no charge if it's part of a real estate deal. If it's a foreign national marrying someone, PR or citizen, if they got their marriage license,
There's a time.
they got it. We'll marry them before closing.
Beautiful.
We'll sponsor the wedding in our office. We'll get Tim donuts and coffee. I do funerals, but that's another story, but no divorce.
So, this is Daryl King, Shared in the Mindsets. I'd like to congratulate and thank Garry and Evan Shapiro for being here, being so humble to share their wisdom and knowledge with us. Obviously we went, I don't know, it's already an hour and 40 minutes. So, they graciously gave their time. And, if there's any further questions, I'll have you email me in here at homes@darylking.com. And then if I get a bunch of questions, I'll email to them, and then we can put out the answers later on. But, we have an ongoing relationship with them all the time because I respect and honor who they are and what they are and the great capabilities they bring to the table as a partnership with me and our team. And, like I say, they're very well known. And again, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Right, Garry, always a pleasure. Evan,
thank you.
Right. So, till next time, we have my good friend Susan, September 7th, for the next episode of Sharing the Mindsets. She is going to be talking about mindsets. This woman is supercharged. But meantime, let's give him a big hand again.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Hasta la vista, everybody. Till next time.